Hey everybody, welcome to week 4. I'm going to just do a brief, hopefully brief, you guys know I'm long-winded, brief walkthrough of what I want you to do this week. Last week, in week 3, you worked on your discussion board, starting off this unit, so I will have those graded hopefully by the end of this week. Like it says in the syllabus, it usually takes me about a week to grade things. Now, because I posted that midweek video last week and I have kind of already graded, or not graded, but looked at about half of the discussion board, it shouldn't take me as long. It kind of just depends on everything I've got going on this week. So hopefully you'll see those grades by Sunday. So that would be, let me look, Sunday, March 4th. So you should see those grades up by then. If not, and you're concerned, shoot me an email. I'll also, as usual, send a little announcement in Blackboard once I've finished those grades. So we are going to talk just briefly about what I want you to do in week 4. So I'm already here in weekly lessons and assignments. If I go into our first unit, the first thing that I want to go through, as usual, is the learning timeline and due dates, so that we can just talk really quickly about what I want you to look at this week. In week 4, so scroll down, make this a little bigger. You've got 6 lessons to review: analysis, classification, developing paragraphs, parts of an essay, the rhetorical situation, audience purpose and tone, and thesis statements. There's quite a bit of reading for this assignment, or for these lessons. Analysis is all kind of like things that have been typed into Blackboard, so you don't have to use your book to learn about analysis. Classification is reading a chapter. There's a chapter on classification in our textbook, so you'll read that. Developing paragraphs and parts of an essay, both of our books talk heavily about these super important concepts, so make sure that you're doing the reading there. And then our handbook talks about the rhetorical situation, audience purpose and tone, which is really the basis of our assignments. Our assignment this week, and then also, of course, our final essay. So you really want to make sure that you're doing your reading for these lessons this week. In the thesis statement lesson, you've got a couple videos in here just to kind of reinforce what good thesis statements are. There's some practice activities, because there are great thesis statements and then there are not so great thesis statements, and I want you guys to know the difference. And in your thesis statement lesson this week, there's a progress journal. Now again, progress journals are not due until the end of week 5, so you have some time still to work on them. But for those of you who like to get your assignments out of the way, get started with things early, or kind of like do your assignments logically as you're learning something, maybe work on that element of your essay, then doing the progress journals in advance or when you see them coming up in your lessons is always a good idea. So those are the 6 lessons that I want you to look at this week. You also have a response due by the end of this week, so that's due Sunday, March 4th by 11:59 p.m. as usual. It's an audience purpose and tone response using one of the readings for this unit. So that's really what I'm going to do with this video, is kind of just walk you through what I want the response to look like. So if I go back up to the top here, I'm just going to go back 1 into this unit and go down to assignments. The first thing I want to do is show you where you can find the rubric for this, because I'm not sure that I've shown this to you in any other videos. So what you're going to do is open up the response assignment learning module. And again, remember, whenever you open up one of the assignment learning modules, you're going to see there's multiple pages, because there's always information I want you to know before you turn in your assignment. But it's good to just kind of go to the end of the learning module early on in the week, just to know what the assignment is before you actually start it. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm just going to jump all the way to the audience purpose and tone assignment here. And because I've already sample submitted this somewhere else, I'm going to click Start New. You won't have to do this. Whenever you open up your audience, purpose, and tone response assignment and submission area in the learning module, what you see here, is the page that you will see immediately. You won't see what you just saw 2 seconds ago. So when you're in the, again, audience, purpose, and tone submission area, there's the points possible here, which is of course 50, and then you can view the rubric. So if you haven't started looking at these rubrics before you've turned your assignments in, these can be really helpful because they'll help you kind of know exactly the details that I'm looking for and how I'm going to be grading your work. Now the only rubric that I haven't already created, of course, at the beginning of class is the essay rubric, but that should be up by now. So make sure that you're looking at that as well, especially, before you turn it in, because it's always good to know where you're going in the course and like what you need to do in order to complete those major essay assignments for each unit. So this is the rubric. It'll tell you like the criteria that I'm looking for and how I grade it. So formatting and citations. Response is formatted in MLA format with proper last name and page number, your name, instructor's name, class date, font, size, spacing, and margins. It includes in-text citations in a works cited page, and I take off half a point per error, or if something's missing, then half a point for that missing element. And you can earn up to 5 points for formatting and citations. So the same is true for like word count. Now word count, you don't actually earn any points, but I do take off 1 point for every 50 words that your response is short. So be wary of that. And then you can just kind of go through, look at each category and how I'm grading it, all the way down to grammar, which is worth 3 points. And you can see that, if you have terrible grammar, you're only going to get 1 point. Some grammar errors, you'll get 2 points, and no grammar errors, you'll get 3 points. And then you can click exit and you can go back to the actual assignment itself, which is what I want to go over now. I'm going to kind of read through this assignment and then pause at intervals in order to kind of talk more about what it is that I want you to do. So using your chosen text, well, what exactly does that mean? Remember, if you've already looked at the essay assignment, then you'll know you have to pick 2 texts to compare and contrast, and you can choose from, I think, like 5 or 6. I'm going to go back. This is telling me that I haven't saved any changes, but I haven't really made any changes, so that's okay. I'm going back. I clicked audience, purpose, and tone, and this is the actual essay assignment. So it opened up a new window just because I want to show you those readings. So these are the readings that you can choose from right here. And remember, maybe you printed out this essay assignment sheet just so that you can always reference it whenever you need to. But just remember that this is pretty much going to be linked in every single one of your assignment learning modules. So you always can find this. I do recommend that you print it out as well, though. So you have these readings here, and that's really what this response is referring to. Using your chosen text, that means you're picking one of these readings for your response. The reason you're picking a reading from your essay is because you may use, as it says in the overview, you may use your work in your response in your final essay. So if you turn in your response and you do a really, really good job analyzing audience, purpose, and tone, you like what you've done, you enjoy the reading that you've chosen, you can use that in compare and contrast with the other reading in your essay. So you kind of could already do some of the groundwork if you pick the right text. Now, of course, once you get your grade back for your response and you see my comments and things, you will want to improve on your work before you submit your response. And as a side note, let's say you do your response and it's basically your essay, which I don't think that would happen because your essay is comparing and contrasting two texts and your response is just asking you to look at one. So obviously it's not the same. But let's say you just went above and beyond and you already started comparing and contrasting two texts in your response. You can't submit the response for the essay. Like, you can't submit the same assignment twice. You have to improve and make changes to your work, or else you aren't really doing any additional work. You're just using the same document for 2 grades, and I don't accept that. So just make sure that even though it says here in the overview that if you write about one of the texts you plan to evaluate in your audience purpose and tone essay, then you have permission to use your writing from the response in your final essay. This part is really important as long as you make suggested changes and updates to improve your work. So I need to see improvement from response to the essay. Okay, so let's get back to reading through the prompt for this response assignment. Again, you won't see this. I have to click Start New because I used this as an example earlier in the course. Okay, so using your chosen text, write a 550 to 700 word response. And again, a response is just basically an essay, but without the introduction and the conclusion. You don't need those 2 paragraphs. Word response that classifies and defines the author's audience, purpose, and tone, and provides examples from the text that you discuss in detail to support your classification and definition for each. Okay, so what exactly does that mean? In this response, you are analyzing audience, analyzing purpose, and analyzing tone. So first you have to classify these things. Classifying, remember, it just means to put this content into categories. So if we're saying the audience is females who are 50 years or older and who want to go back to college, you're classifying or categorizing who the audience is. If we say that the purpose is to entertain, we are classifying the purpose. We're putting it in a category. If we say the tone is sophisticated and snarky, then we are putting the tone into groups, into categories. We're classifying that tone. So that's really what you're doing there. Now, I also have the word define in the response prompt. So what you're doing with that is once you classify, once you say the tone is snarky and sophisticated, well, you have to define what that means. What does it mean to have a snarky tone? What does it mean to have a sophisticated tone? In your definition, you will use examples from the text to support, well, snarky means this, and here's how I know this tone is snarky. So that's where these 2 words, classification and definition, come up here. That is the whole point of this response, is that you can classify and that you can define and that you can use the text, your chosen text, to support your classification and your definition. If you say the tone is snarky and sophisticated, but you can't point to specific language within the text to prove that it's snarky and sophisticated, then your response is not doing what it needs to be doing. If you say that the purpose of the text that you've chosen is to entertain, and you cannot explain why is this entertaining, then you haven't successfully defined and supported your answer. If you say that the audience is females 50 and older who are going back to college, but you can't support and define why are they 50 and older, if you can't support that definition, then your response is not doing what it needs to be doing. Okay, so let's keep going. In your response, here I am. In your response, please ensure that you have classified the author's intended audience into at least one group and defined who that group is, that you have classified and defined the author's primary purpose for writing, and you can include secondary purposes if you notice them. So that means like maybe the author really is trying to inform you of something. That's their primary purpose, is mostly informational. But also the text is a little bit funny. So we could say there's a secondary purpose there, which is to entertain because of the humor that the writer uses. And then we would point to that humor. So if you notice there are secondary purposes to the text, then you can definitely talk about all of them. Also, make sure that your response is classified and defined the author's tone. Again, like I just said, providing examples of specific language from the text to support your ideas. So throughout your whole response, I want you guys to make sure that you're constantly going back and pointing at the text. Literally, imagine yourself taking our textbook as you're writing your response. So you take our textbook and you open it up to the reading that you're looking at. So let's say this is your reading, and you're saying, okay, the tone is snarky. Here's where I see snarky. The tone is sophisticated. Here's where I see sophistication. Right? This is a sophisticated language. So that's exactly what you're doing throughout the whole text. Is you're taking the book, you're taking your reading, and you're pointing to audience, purpose, and tone. If you cannot point to audience, purpose, and tone in your text and convey that in your response, then you're not fulfilling the prompt for this response. So just keep that in mind. Pointing is key here. Structure your response as follows. So basically, I'm trying to just give you a logical structure for how you can organize your ideas. Start with a statement that classifies and defines audience, purpose, tone. So, of course, you have your MLA format. You've got your name and your teacher's name and the class title and the date, and you've got your last name and page number. In the right top corner, you have a title on there. Maybe your title is like response, audience, purpose, tone, response, something like that. Then in just a tiny little, you really don't even want to call it a paragraph, but it might look like a paragraph. In just one sentence or a couple sentences, make your statement. This is the audience, this is the purpose, this is the tone. Then I want you to go on and have 3 separate paragraphs. One where you address audience, one where you address purpose, and one where you address tone. So little statement and then 3 paragraphs, okay? Make sure that you write your paragraphs like paragraphs. Start with a topic sentence. Use context. So context is like what's going on in the story or in the text in order to introduce my ideas. Like you might need to know that this is what the author is talking about for this example to make sense. If you don't need to know it, then don't put the context in there. But usually the context is helpful just in kind of giving the reader some bearings, like where am I? Start with your topic sentence, use context, go into a lead-in phrase, transition into your example. Remember, use the examples because you're pointing at the text. And so obviously you're not recording yourself, so you can't physically point to the text, but you can write down those quotes from the text. So like if you're saying that the tone is sophisticated, then quote a line from the text that shows sophisticated tone or that the words are overly sophisticated or something like that. Once you give your example, then you're going to analyze it. So it's not enough to just say, hey, this tone is snarky. Here's an example. You have to then, after you provide the example, go into that quote and pick it apart. The word, whatever word, this string of words is particularly snarky because blank. These words are very sophisticated. They're elevated language. What exactly about that quote makes it snarky or makes it sophisticated? Those are the types of things that I want to see here. Once you're done, you will connect your ideas back to your main point. So you're talking again about audience, purpose, tone. The main point of your audience paragraph is to identify the audience. So just wrap it up, connect back to your topic sentence, and then you're good to go. Once you've done that for all your paragraphs, you're done. You don't have to put a conclusion on it. You don't have to go back and add any kind of introduction or anything like that. So you can, edit it, make sure it's correct, and then submit it. I do have a sample statement and tone paragraph here, and what I want to do is just kind of point out the concept of first pointing to the text and then analyzing what you pointed at. So what I'm claiming in this paragraph, it's a paragraph on tone, and I'm claiming that the tone is ironic and sarcastic. And in order to do that, I point to the text. So here, I'm highlighting the quote that I use. So I say, it states, I think you accidentally confirmed your selection to deactivate your account again. Why don't we go back a page and forget this ever happened? Free pass. All right, so I'm saying the tone is ironic and sarcastic, and I'm saying here's an example of that irony and of that sarcasm. But that's not enough. I have to keep going. So after this, I have a statement where I discuss how that quote is ironic and sarcastic. I say, for Kupperberg's audience, this comment from Facebook is ironic because they understand the connection to how challenging it is to cancel a social media account. So there's some irony there, right? I'm commenting on what I just discussed in order to analyze the quote and really reinforce that I understand why it's ironic and sarcastic. I'm not just saying that it is, I'm proving it in my own words and with my own logical explanation, okay? And I do that again later on in the paragraph. There's some questions here. There's another example. Are you sure? Accidentally. So here I'm pointing to specific phrases in the text. I have another quote that I'm pointing to. After the quote, I say here, right, specifically pointing to this quote. Here, Kupperberg, through his personification of Facebook, I should have has in here, has taken on a sarcastic tone, right? So how do I know that it's sarcastic? Well, now I talk about sarcasm in the rest of the paragraph. So it's important that you are consistently pointing to the text, talking about what you're pointing to. Again, it's not enough to just point. Okay, so make sure you have MLA formatting, make sure that you've got in-text citations, make sure you have your works cited page. Providing a works cited page on your response means that I can look at those works cited pages and put comments on them just in case you have any errors. Then you can fix them for your final essay so that you don't lose points on your final essay. Grading, remember there is a rubric at the top of the page so that you can see that. How to submit your response, obviously browse your computer, find your file where you've done your response and add it in here. If anybody is working with Google Drive to submit documents, please don't just copy and paste a link to your Google, like a share link. I want you to download your document as a Word document or download your document as a PDF. The way that you do that is by going to your Google Drive, going to File, and going to Download As. You can select Microsoft Word or PDF. Even if you do not have Microsoft Word on your computer, you can still download your document as a Microsoft Word document. You won't be able to open it up on your computer, but you can definitely still upload it here. You just, browse your computer, go to Downloads, and then that's where you can see where it is. Again, you won't be able to open it on your computer, but you can do it here. The reason I don't want you to just copy and paste a link to your Google Drive is because usually I won't be able to make comments on your work. I will only be able to view your work, and I don't like to do that. So there you have it. I think that covers everything that I wanted to talk to you guys about in this week. I tried to make this short, but obviously I didn't do that. It's already 25 minutes. So if you have questions, please email me. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have, and hopefully you will find this video helpful and you will look at week 5 video next week. So y'all have fun writing your responses, and keep working on audience purpose tone. We're about halfway through the by the end of this week, we'll be almost halfway through this unit. So have a good week.